Welcome back. In this clip, Bishop Barron is explaining the deadliest sin, which is pride. He doesn't just explain what pride is, though. He explains the solution to this deadliest sin. So let's go ahead and watch this clip, and then afterwards I have a can't-miss insight that I'm taking from this clip that I think is so important for all of us. Let's go ahead and watch the clip.
Pride. It is the most deadly of the deadly sins. That's why it's number one. It's the capital sin, from the Latin caput, right, meaning head. It's the head sin from which everything else flows. Pride is the problem. You know, as Catholics, when we talk about sin or vice, what do we think of first? Probably sexual sin, right? Lust. But in fact, according to Dante, who was one of the great articulators of the deadly sins, lust is the least significant of the seven. Mind you, it's a deadly sin, don't get me wrong. But it's the least significant. The most significant, and all the great masters agree with him, is pride. What is pride? I want to look at it first under a theological aspect, and then if you want a more psychological aspect. What's pride theologically? It is arrogating to oneself the distinct prerogatives of God. Think now of the sin of Lucifer. Think of the sin of Adam and Eve. Arrogating to ourselves the unique prerogative of God. How is that expressed now in the beautiful language of Genesis? They grasp at the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Well, see, who alone has this distinctive and grounding knowledge of good and evil? Well, that's God. When Adam and Eve seize that prerogative for themselves, they commit this great sin of pride. That's why, it's Saint Michael who battles Lucifer. His name, Michael, in Hebrew means, who is like God? His name is a taunt. It's beautiful, isn't it? Lucifer has grasped at divinity. I am God. Michael, who is like God? That, by the way, that's the battle of the angels. It was purely an intellectual battle. It was a taunting challenge. Who's like God? Not you, pal. See, that's the idea. Pride is grasping at divinity for ourselves. Now, you say, that all sounds very abstract and very distant. Let me read something to you. This is from the famous, or I'd say infamous, 1992 decision of our U.S. Supreme Court in the matter of Casey versus Planned Parenthood. It was an abortion-related case, but the way the justices resolved it, listen to their language, is remarkable, even breathtaking. Listen. At the heart of liberty is the right to define one's own concept of existence, of meaning, of the universe, of the mystery of human life. Oh, is that all? That's all my freedom allows? You see how that is tantamount to a grasping at the knowledge of good and evil. I determine the meaning of life, universe, human life. Arrogating to oneself the unique prerogative of God, that's pride. Okay, so what's the real problem with pride? I'll put it now in one little phrase. It's boring. Now why? See, when you arrogate to yourself the prerogative of God, you've turned in on yourself. St. Augustine defined it beautifully. Curvatus in se. That means caved in around oneself. I determine the meaning of my life, my projects, my plans, my intentions. Ho-hum. My little world. I'm living in this little, clean, well-lighted space of my own egotistic plans. How wonderful, by the way, when you can break out of that into what Hans Urs von Balthasar calls the theodrama. What's the theodrama? That's the drama that God is producing, that God is writing, that God is directing. You've got a role in it, but God's the producer, the director, the writer. When you surrender to that and you find your role in the theodrama, now you begin to live. I can't resist in this parish of St. Thomas More, is one of my great heroes. How many have seen The Man for All Seasons, the great film about Thomas More, which is my favorite movie? I saw it when I was 16, I think, for the first time. I watched it every year of my life since then. Remember there's a scene, those who've seen it at the very beginning of the movie, there's a young guy called Richard Rich, who's a Cambridge graduate. He's about 20 years old, full of himself, full of ambition. He wants a big career. So he's hanging around Thomas More. who's a courtier of Henry VIII, and he's looking for a position. Moore resists him, but then finally he says, well, Rich, I've got a position for you. What? There's an opening in the local school. You could be a teacher. And Richard Rich is completely crestfallen, a teacher. And Moore says to him, you could be a great teacher. And the young man says, and if I were, who would know it? Now see, that's not the theodrama, that's the ego drama, right? The drama that I'm writing, I'm directing, I'm producing, and above all, I'm starring in it. It's my drama. Ho-hum, see? Moore says to him, your friends would know it, your pupils would know it, you would know it, God would know it. Not a bad public, that. That's a turning point in that whole play. Moore is luring Richard Rich into the theodrama. See, this great, open, expansive space of what God intends for us. See, in the prideful person, all of us are prideful people, we lock ourselves into the little narrow space of what we want. Surrender to the theodrama, and now you really begin to live. You know, in Ephesians, Paul says this, there's a power already at work in you that can do infinitely more than you can ask or imagine. I love that line. What's the power? It's the Holy Spirit. It's already at work in you, and it can do so much more than you can ask or imagine within the confines of your little ego drama. Break out. Open yourself up to the Holy Spirit. That's overcoming pride. And you see why pride is the fundamental sin that we get locked in, curvatus in se. Now, I mentioned there was a kind of a psychological side to pride. Here's what it is. Do a little thought experiment. Imagine now you're having a conversation with a friend, and you're just following the rhythm of the conversation. You're just together exploring the truth, following where it leads. You're not preoccupied with yourself or the impression you're making or what he thinks of you. You're just following along. How wonderful, how exuberant that experience is. It's as though the conversation is playing you. Now, contrast that to, you're having a conversation, but you're desperately interested in how you're appearing and what he thinks of you. And are you making the right impression? And what's happened there is you're not lost in the beauty and rhythm of the conversation. You're not given over to the truth. You're turned in awkwardly and anxiously upon yourself. That's pride. That's pride. It's like a monkey on your back. You're going through your whole life, and all you're worried about is the impression you're making, what they think of you, and it divorces you from reality. You see what I'm driving at? When you're lost in that conversation, you're into reality. The prideful person is locked in a little prison. Or shift that metaphor, the monkey on the back all the time. Here's a great line. I love this from one of the spiritual masters. He says, most of us go through life like we're on this bus that's traveling through the most beautiful, breathtaking countryside imaginable. But we have the shades pulled down, and we're fighting about who gets first seat on the bus. Yes, that's life for many of us prideful people. Forget about first seat on the bus. Who cares? Open the window. You're in the last seat in the bus. Who cares? Open the window. Look. Let them fight about it. That's the ego drama versus the theodrama. Open the shade. Open the window. Look out. Now, this is why the antidote to pride, the lively virtue, is humility. Now, I know right away we get hung up here because we think of false humility. Oh, who am I? Oh, little me, I'm nothing. Well, that isn't it at all. Humilitas in Latin, right, is from the word humus, which means the earth, the ground. I love that. To be humble is not to be in a phony way self-deprecating. It means close to reality. That's why in Dante's Divine Comedy, the seven-story mountain, that's Thomas Merton's book, but it's based on Dante's idea of the mountain of purgatory has 7 levels because you've got to be purged of the 7 deadly sins. So the first level of the mountain, pride, you know what the prideful have to do? They have to carry great boulders on their back. And you say, well, they're just being punished. No, think about it. The boulder pushes you down to the earth, to the ground. You get close to the reality of things. That's where the humble person hangs out. Stop worrying about the impression you're making and give yourself to reality. Stop worrying about what other people think of you. Stop worrying about your reputation and give yourself over to reality. That's humility. And that's the source of joy, you know. Here's some practical advice for you. And in the remaining weeks of Lent, maybe we could all practice some of this. If you struggle with pride, and we all do, it's the capital sin, purposely take the lower place. Look at that in the spiritual tradition, the monastic tradition. They'll recommend that a lot. Is we're always struggling to see who's first on the bus. Forget about it. Purposely take the lower place. Take the less important position, the one that won't get attention. Even when you think, hey, naturally, I deserve more attention, give the attention to somebody else. Draw attention away from yourself to somebody else. Learn to love simple things. You know, fellow sufferers from pride. Every minute of every day, we have everything we need right in front of us to be happy. That's one of the great spiritual masters said that. Every minute of every day, every one of us has everything we need to be happy. Now, what does he mean by that? He means the simplest things, if we surrender to them, will give us joy. You know, watch little kids, because little kids are great. That's Jesus, of course, said, unless you become like a little child, you can't enter the kingdom of heaven, right? Watch a little child who's discovering a bug for the first time. The bug crawling on the ground. A little kid, look at it. Fascinated, watch it. We come along, kill it. Step on it. Watch a little kid, though. Pick it up. And bugs are kind of fascinating if you look at them closely. Think of it was a great, watch again, the spiritual masters, very interesting, do this a lot. Animals. You know the happiest beings I know, I'm serious about this, are dogs. My sister has a great dog, his name is Homer. I think my little nephew named him because of home runs, not Homer the poet, but anyway, he's called Homer. Homer's the happiest being I know. And I'm not kidding at all when I say that. I know all kinds of people, myself included. Homer's by far the happiest being. Why? Because he's not hung up on reputation and what people think. And I walk in and he just is overjoyed. The dog is so overjoyed he's bursting out of his skin. Well, see, so it would be if we turned and became again like little children, surrender to the simplest things and find joy in them. Stop worrying about who's first on the bus. Doesn't matter. Open the window, Okay. There's some practical advice for humility.
So the can't miss insight, I think that is so crucial that all of us see, is that there is a false humility that we can possess. It's almost as if there is a prideful way to admit that you're prideful. And so Bishop Barron's explanation that we need to step into reality, we need to come back down to earth, I think is so crucial for us to understand how we are to deal with pride, the pride in our lives. We need to get real about our situation. We need to get real about who we are. Not just admit that we are prideful, but try our best to actually live and walk into the reality of what it actually means to be humble. This was such an important insight for me because oftentimes I think that I will readily admit that I'm prideful, but I won't kind of walk into the reality of how to actually live a life of humility. I need to get better at this, and Bishop Barron has really helped me to see that. Okay, that's all I have for this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Hope you have a great day. Peace.